changes related to this is under computer supplies. About the third line from the bottom, you'll see computer workstation replacements. In the past, we've had a policy that we want to maintain all of our computers and replace them on a 4-year cycle. However, we have not been funding it to that 4-year cycle and to the availability that we need to. So since Andy's coming on to the district, he's done a great job of more standardizing stuff. COVID really taught us that probably laptops and docking stations might be a better benefit than having a desktop for everyone, so that we can ensure that everyone has the capabilities that then when they go home, that they can work both of those places. So Andy's doing a great job. He's working with the state to kind of figure out, the state does a contract that's based on levels of need of computers for processing speeds and the like. So this will be the first year that we're really funding all of those to be able to get all of our computers and all of our stuff on a 4-year cycle, to ensure employees have the necessary equipment to do their jobs kind of regardless of where they are. On page 7, we go through a whole slew of software subscriptions. Now this is an account that we started maybe in 2021, maybe in 2020. We're ending up with a lot of softwares that you don't buy the software and pay an annual maintenance, you pay annually for it. So no longer is there the opportunity for ACHD to, quote, own the software. It's in the cloud, it's hosted by another company, so you're paying a subscription for that. And with that, there are higher costs, specifically the Viewpoint, which is our Vista accounting system and ERP system, has switch to that. So as we continue to switch to that format, you'll see comparable changes out of the annual maintenance and repair account for those same softwares, because now we're paying typically more on an annual basis, but it just has to do with the way that the market's running and the way that information technology is turning. So all of these softwares are utilized throughout the district. A significant number of them are specifically IT related. They help us with the GIS system, they help with security, they help with management of the networks and the like.
Madam President.
Commissioner McKinney.
Christine, just curious, and maybe you don't have this information, but I know that there are many organizations where one of the challenges is they get certain software, and then over time, maybe one sort of goes out of use or diminishes use in favor of another, and yet the first one stays and stays and stays. Do we have a procedure for periodically reviewing what software we have and determining, hey, you know what, we don't actually need these over here, let's get rid of them. We've got 5 we don't need and 2 new ones that we do need, let's clean house. How often do we do that?
Madam President, Commissioner McKinney, yes, we do that. And then I do know that through this recent analysis that IT had done, they're working through that with some policy changes and some other analytical sites to do that. There is a constant view of that, obviously, especially when we get the annual billings or the quarterly billings for stuff like that, that in order to assure that we're utilizing and supporting only, right? So again, Andy's done a really great job of, since he came on, to make sure that what our IT staff is spending time supporting is stuff that we actually do need, and taking a deeper dive kind of into those financials. It's one of the things that you kind of end up in when you get bigger and bigger and more line items. It can get a little hairy, but I do know that that analysis happens throughout the year, every year, excuse me.
Good, thank you.
Not saying it's 100% perfect, but there are those that, I just got an email a couple days ago that was like, oh, we don't need this anymore and we'll go be doing this. And we'll see those. We're working really hard to also do that as we get new software. So as we go through with the website and the rebranding, there's a couple pieces that we will have savings on in the future for that, because we'll be able to wrap those up into those new softwares and programs.
Very good. Thanks, Christine.
On page 8, Again, so this gets into more of the those softwares, the maintenance and repair. Those are the softwares that we've purchased. These are the annual agreements related to those. So it's kind of an ebbs and flows between the software subscriptions and then the software maintenance accounts. Some of them have to do with just maintenance on servers and maintenance that we utilize for help desk and the like. And then on page 9, the big ones on page 9 are the professional services for IT, which again is our Involta, our co-location, which is where we have our servers out off Maple Grove. We do have our security, external services for report writing and laserfish support, in addition to the cybersecurity. Excuse me. On page 10, it's the legal budget. Feel free to attack. No? Okay. Sorry. Okay. Okay. The big change here is that there is a slight decrease in it. It has to do with the fact that we're not, the past couple of years we've had MEG on board for our ADA implementation plan, and we're working through completing that process.
Just a quick question, Madam President. So the contract fees we have with Holland and Hart, that's the last line, legal fees or professional services, the second to the last, or?
So Holland and Hart, Madam President, Commissioner Hanson, yes, Holland and Hart, any additional legal fees that we pay for external counsel will come out of there. Professional services would be, example, several years ago when we had Altavia and we were hiring geotechnical places to go and do that. That came out of legal, but it is a professional service that we needed to pay out of that other line. So that has to do with non-legal related legal fees.
So is this, so I was just thinking we had a lot of activity over the last year, and so it's at $350,000 is the extent of our obligation, and we're going to go down $100,000 for legal fees to Holland and Hart over the next year.
Right, because some of those fees for MIG are related to, were coded into the legal fee department.
Well, actually, I was thinking of more than just MIG. I was thinking of all the other things we've talked about.
I remember that MIG was a significant bump when we first discussed.
We're anticipating less
We are
legal
in
problems,
accord.
and that's a good thing.
That's
Mr. Price.
Madam President, Commissioner Steve Price, General Counsel. The reason the 350 related had an additional 100,000 because of the Salt Sid litigation. And now that we believe that that's resolved, then that's why we've reduced that. And it's not uncommon through budget adjustments, at least the second, that if I haven't spent those legal fees or personal services, then we put those back in the budget, and that's always the goal.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
I apologize for that. Salt shed was it.
No apology necessary.
Okay.
We appreciate all this that went, all your hard work that's gone into this, Christine.
Okay, on page 11, we'll start with human resources. So as you'll note, human resources, that's where we do all the hiring for employees. Several years ago, it was $75,000 and then $100,000. We're projecting about $300,000 in FY23 and 24 for costs related to advertising for those positions, and able to utilize all of the various platforms and then the processes to get that. That has to do with ongoing openings and then for the additional new positions as well, is what we're anticipating for that increase. In second adjustments, I will tell you that we are anticipating an increase of that 150 to I think over $200,000 for FY22, just related to the turnover and the market. I think there's a lot of agencies in the area experiencing the same thing. We do also have a line item in the budget under incentives and awards, and it's the career retention. This is one of the things that I want to thank the commission for. It was something that was implemented during the last year's budget for FY22. Those steps done for the 5, 10, 15, and 20 years. So is what happens is we budget that all in the HR budget. And then again, at second adjustments, you'll see, because as those are paid out throughout the year, they're paid out of the department where the employee resides. So again, at second adjustments, I'll have an adjustment to move those funds out of this account into the appropriate accounts for where those were actually paid out of. But for budgeting purposes, we want to show it as a single line item saying, look, this is what we're proposing to commit to retaining our employees who have been here.
Madam President,
Commissioner McKinney.
Christine, so going back to that advertising number, it's looking like the budget amount this year for 22 is 150,000. You're saying it's gonna actually end up a little over 200,000?
Correct, yes, I will be back with commission.
And then for fiscal year 23, we're looking at doubling that budget amount to 300,000.
Correct.
Which I have to admit is a little bit surprising to me, given that over the past year, we've done a lot of hiring, and it seems like the rate of hiring, I don't know, is the rate of hiring really going to double this next fiscal year, or is it seems to me it's fairly comparable to the rate at which we're hiring now.
Madam President, Commissioner McKinney, I don't necessarily always think it's just that's doubling, it's also the cost of doing that's increasing. Again, as with a lot of things in the budget, we do 2 adjustments a year. So if we get to this point next year and we're in the situation where we have additional funding in there, then we can always adjust that out. That being said, if the commission would feel more comfortable starting at a lower number and then we review it at first adjustments and second adjustments and increase it as necessary, I'm happy to do that as well.
Okay. No, I'm just curious about where it's going, so, yeah, that's fine, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
President,
Thank you, Commissioner
I would
Muller.
also be more comfortable with that. And I would be really curious to know how much our expenses for these things are going up in terms of what our vendors are charging us.
And Commissioners, for the record, Paul Daigle, Chief of Staff. Whenever advertising costs have gone up, just like everything else has, especially when we start seeing print ads, print newspaper volume is going down, so they're increasing ad revenue. But typically, every time we go out to try to hire somebody, it's costing us somewhere between $15,000 and $18,000 just to hire one person. So while our hiring rate is the same, it's costing us to bring people on board.
Are we obligated to advertise in print media? Because I get the impression, and this is just my impression, that almost no one is looking in print newspapers anymore for job listings. They're looking online.
We go out to a bunch of different websites, depending upon what we're looking for. We go out to the professional engineer sites, for example. We advertise in a wide variety of mediums, in addition to the print media. There are some things by state law, help me out here, my law degree is dated. There are some things that we have to advertise in print media by state law, so.
Mostly notices.
Right,
Those,
right.
That is correct, and those things get pretty pricey.
Okay.
Those have gone up quite
Yes, that's
substantially.
Add to that, there's been an effort in the last 6 legislative sessions to give the option to a governmental entity to do online posting of legal notices, just because of the cost associated with it. It's a significant
Yeah. Well,
amount of legal notices.
and everybody knows the print realm is shrinking, if not dying. And so, and doing things electronically is generally much less expensive than doing things in print.
I think we're seeing that evolve, so I would not be surprised to have that
It's just a
change,
matter of
but,
time.
right, I agree. Thank
Madam
you, Mr. Price.
Just to clarify,
Commissioner
Madam
Goldberg,
President,
just
you're
one
not
second,
saying-
Commissioner Hanson, Mr. Goldberg.
Yeah, in defense of the print media, there's still statistics weigh heavily in favor of print media for expenditures greater than $1,500. Almost 100% of the folks that spend that kind of money don't spend it unless they have something in their hot little hands to read, which is really
Interesting.
flies in the face of a lot of the digital claims, but they're not valid.
Yeah, I understand. Commissioner Hanson.
Just to clarify, Madam President, Steve, you're not saying we're statutorily obligated to announce openings like we do legal notices for right-of-ways. It's like, we don't have to. And the legal notices obviously aren't under the HR budget, they're under the legal budget, so talking about two different requirements, right? Okay.
That's a great
They got a little
distinction.
conflated,
Yeah.
thanks.
But what, you'll see that number is a big number when, and a lot of that's associated with other parts of the budget, related.
But it's discretionary whether we
I
put
think
our,
it's about $250,000 a year just for legal notices.
yeah, it's discretionary
It's up
whether we
there.
put our
Thank you.
openings in the newspaper.
Just a reminder, if people are talking in the audience, if you're not speaking up, we can't hear you virtually.
Just stand under the green light.
Yeah.
Or a microphone.
Okay, sorry about that, I just got a little, I think we're on to page 12. So on page 12, the bulk of this is related to the professional services that HR helps provide, benefit administration, the employee wellness program, any salary survey, any leadership or customer service training that we're required to do on an annual basis comes out of the HR budget. That's also where they do the random drug testing for all of the DOT requirements and the like. Okay, on page 13, we have a new department. So it was January, we pulled, it was proposed to move the facilities department out of the maintenance division and put it into the overhead. Felt like it was a better fit to do that. So kind of skews averages for a few years related to both the 1300 department and the 4300 department. So this will be our 2 facilities technicians and our 1 facilities coordinator, of which we're doing interviews for, I think the coordinator, excuse me, today. So these numbers are reflective of that. So a lot of this historical information is in the 4300 budget. It's pretty difficult from the ERP and accounting system to show it without skewing the data. But typically, we're not seeing any huge increases overall. We are going out to bid for several of the services that we do on an annual basis, the security patrol, the landscaping and the like. So we maintain those as a competitive bid process annually to ensure that we're spending tax dollars appropriately. We also, this is where the fire suppression and the gate project would reside, and any major building repairs or adjustments that need done. There are going to be a couple adjustments to this budget that I know of, specifically related to, I know, water fountains. So we're going to upgrade all of our water fountains to be able to refill bottles of water, which has been a request, and so it's something we're proposing in the budget for us to be able to do that and get rid of some of those older units that aren't COVID friendly and in order to maintain the ability for our staff. Currently we have one that easily fills water bottles. It's in the break room, but it'll be nice to have those others replaced and used, because otherwise we're just paying to let them sit, and then we're just changing the filters on them after such time.
I'm glad to see this broken out. I think that makes sense, especially now we're looking at.
Yeah, and so again, there will continue to be an evolution of this. Another change is from another department. We're bringing in all of our safety PP&E will be purchased out of this department. Previously it's been sitting in fleet and a couple other departments. So in order to get it, all under one person, Dean's the safety coordinator anyway, and the facilities manager. So in order to be able to maintain that continuity for that whole process, we are bringing that. So again, there's a lot of moving parts, and I'm sure that at first adjustments there will be more stuff that needs moved from one to the other, because I just can't catch it all, and sometimes you have to have the practical application before
Absolutely.
you understand how that goes.
Where you need to pivot.
On page 15 is our communications budget. The biggest item in this, of course, is our rebranding and our website project that was approved last week, I believe. You will see in second adjustment some amounts, or an amount for this, for beginning in FY22, and with the hopes of it completing in FY23. As we continue through the process, we may see some additional costs filtering into other departments. Once the rebranding is completed and the new logo is finalized, we'll need to be doing rebranding of all of our vehicles and all of our pieces of equipment, and so we'll see those expenses come through as budget adjustments in the future once we kind of get where we're going to find out that kind of stuff. And then Shandy and
Madam President, yeah, I just have a question. So that is down under office equipment rebranding.
Right.
It was described to us as a personal services, not professional services. So that's distinct, because I noticed there are separate things down here as professional services. I just want to know, make sure we're consistent. This is more a question to Steve, because there's a legal distinction between professional services, which have to be bid, and
right.
Personal services, which don't necessarily. And so the budget needs to reflect that. I don't see personal services unless that is down as office equipment.
No, so so Madam President, Commissioner Hanson, so it is a personal services agreement from the legal side. Accountants like to be in charge of things. So from our chart of accounts, anything in a 600 account is considered something that we can capitalize. So we're able to capitalize this expense, and we will amortize it over 3 years. So that's why it's in, and we have about 6 different account titles, none of them of which we just try to pick which one fits best. Maintenance equipment or any of those expenses that are over $5,000, we try and depreciate those over several years. And again, with this technology is a 3-year, but it allows us to do that. So it is a personal services agreement from the legal side and the contractual side, but from where we're going to code it in the budget, it will be in the 640 office equipment so that we can capture those costs.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Christine.
Okay, on page 16, this is where we start the planning and programming division. So this first budget is Justin and his admin, Rebecca. Pretty light on anything that's in here. Mostly made up of salaries and insurances and budget type stuff. Again, this budget does, as the director stated earlier, include the proposed 8-1% COLA and the 10.2% medical increase. So this budget will only show the 10.2% increase for medical related to the employer portion. We don't budget individuals. Next, on page 17, this is the planning division. Yeah, and I do apologize for the formatting on this. I will, it'll look better in the future, I promise. Some of the big things to point out here are the request to purchase some e-bikes so that we can do some ride-alongs on various corridors and kind of see how that's going. We can do team ride-alongs and then ride-alongs with probably the BAC and the like. So our plan is to purchase a couple of those. And then under professional services for the department, you'll see that we're due for the pavement assessment, something that we do every 3 years.
Madam President, Commissioners, sorry for interrupting, but with your questions, could you please speak up with those? Some of our audience is having a hard time. They're great with Christine, but if you could please speak up a little bit with your questions, that'd be great. Okay, thank you all.
We want to have Christine repeat every question.
Yes.
I have a lot of water here.
Madam President.
Commissioner Hanson.
Yes.
All right, here we go.
So now that Boise Bike Share has e-bikes, is there a reason why we aren't just using those? I've done that for ride-alongs. I've just gone ahead and, as a member of Boise Bike Share, I just use the bike, and it seems like that's a logical thing than to try and own the same thing that Boise Bike Share already owns.
I will inquire on that and
Thank
let you
you.
know. I was unaware.
And the other, I assume, would give people mileage for driving their vehicles for business related. Is there a calculation if we use employees to do business related work and they use their own bicycle? Is there a comparable mileage reimbursement?
There is not currently, we get the rate for mileage reimbursement related to vehicles is calculated by the IRS. So I'm not sure. I'm happy to do some research on that on the biking.
That'd be great, because if employees would prefer to use their bike and it'd be a small mileage reimbursement, but at least that would be better than creating an incentive for them to use their automobile when they prefer to use their bike for business-related work. And I know a lot of them do, and they probably don't get reimbursed for it.
Okay. Yes,
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Again, so within the professional services, we're continuing to work through and our neighborhood plans. So we'll be doing Meridian Downtown as well as the West Bench. Both of those are anticipated to actually start. I'm going to do a budget adjustment and second adjustments to bring those on so we can get those going and kind of started a little early rather than waiting until the beginning of the fiscal year. And then again, the pavement assessment, the PCI that we do every 3 years is going to happen next year. And the continuing on the bike and ped safety initiative is directed by the commission last year.
Madam President, quick question on the early
Commissioner Hanson, go right
on
ahead.
the early geotech evaluation, which has nothing this year, but is that related to a project we've talked about?
So Commissioner Hanson, it does have funding in FY22. We don't have line item budgets broken out in FY22, but there is early geotech. This is related to mostly our residential and arterial and collector capital maintenance projects, so that while we are preparing the packets that we want to have designed, we know what's going on with the geotech in the area. We several years ago, there were some residential areas that we ended up with some significant soft spots in that would have been nice to know before we entered into the packet. We ended up with significant change orders because we wanted to get in there and get it done appropriately. So this is just another way as for us to prepare the appropriate treatment on any of those roadways, whether it's an inlay, whether it's a full rehab.
So, Madam President, I just
Commissioner
wondered
Hanson.
whether this is something we have discussed previously.
Trying to figure out which one you were looking at, Ryan or
I
Justin?
thought you were
Justin.
looking outside. I was like,
That was Justin's budget.
Madam President, members of the Commission, for the record, my name is Justin Lucas. I'm the Deputy Director of Planning and Project Management. Commissioner Hanson, yes, this was included in last year's budget and was discussed last year. So this is the second year that we've taken this approach. I think Christine did a good job describing it. Some of these funds are not new funds. They're actually just being shifted from other areas in the budget and consolidated underneath Scott Forey, who's our pavement management engineer. So it's not really a increase. It's just a consolidation of this effort under one person so that we have a consistent approach.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Madam President,
Commissioner Pickering?
thank you. Are we still on page 17?
Yes.
Thank you. Christine, I have one question for you. On the grant writing support, is that specific to a particular grant, or are those just general, is that just general support?
Madam President, Commissioner Pickering, so we put that as a placeholder in every year, that $15,000. It's not necessarily for a particular grant. Right now, the grant, as you're very aware, the grant opportunities are very dynamic. And so we feel it's important to have that placeholder in there if we need those funds. We did use them last year, as you remember, this year, as we prepared for the RAISE grant opportunity. So as of right now, there's not a specific grant opportunity we've identified, but we do have that as a placeholder. And as with other items, as we go through the year, if we're not using it, we adjust it out through the adjustment process.
Very good.
Justin, sorry, Madam President, one follow-up question. So Justin, did we use up the whole 15,000 for this current year? I'm just kind of wondering, given the breadth of grant opportunities potentially, I'm wondering if 15,000 is sufficient.
Madam President, Commissioner Pickering, a great question. We actually expended more funds than the 15,000 that we used to prepare that RAISE grant, which was a very extensive grant application. As of right now, we don't have plans to submit another grant of that style, and we are waiting until August to find out about the results of the RAISE grant. And oftentimes, to be totally transparent with grant opportunities, you go after a grant like the RAISE grant, getting it the first year, I'm very hopeful and optimistic, not always the case. And so we're able to reuse much of that work that was done for those RAISE grants in a subsequent year. So I don't think we need to have as extensive of a budget to go after those opportunities.
Thank you, Justin.
Thanks, Justin.
Okay, going on to page 18. So this is the capital projects portion. This is where our project managers, supervisor, and capital project manager reside. I apologize, my brain stopped. With this, I will say that there is a decrease in the salaries. So there is another new department. This is the year of new departments. And you will see it on the next page, on page 19, it is called utilities. So we're working through moving all of our locators and all of our utility specific FTEs under one department. Previously they were under 3, so we're trying to combine them all under one, 2 of which come out of this 1195 department and go into 1197. The other ones I'll point out as we go through the remaining budgets, and you can see where those changes are made. So again, as with new departments, there's new things that we'll figure out, and we've gone through and combed through, hopefully getting all of those line items adjusted out for tools and the like, but there could still be additional adjustments needed in the future for that. But again, the bulk of this budget is related to specifically any requirements for PE licenses, but bulk of it being labor. Again, on page 19 is the new department. So you'll see currently this has about 5 FTEs sitting in it. This is where the dig line and all of those line locators are being moved into. Not as drastic, of a move as with the facilities budget, but definitely a move. On page 20 is the right-of-way. These are the right-of-way professionals, that purchase the right-of-way for all of our capital projects. So a significant amount in here have to do with their licenses, their training, their annual dues in order to be able to provide the services they do, as well as our property management specialist, Lori, who works through selling our surplus properties and going through those, maintaining all of our the properties that the district has until we do surplus them.
Madam President?
Commissioner McKinney.
Christine, this budget is simply for the, administration of our right-of-way department and doesn't include the cost of right-of-way itself, correct?
Madam President, Commissioner McKinney, that's correct. Yep, that will be in the capital budget. It's about, I'm gonna guess $7 to $9 million. I can't remember what it exactly is this year, but that is, that's correct. This is where it sits the people.
Madam President.
Commissioner Hanson.
And Christine, is there a new FTE under right-of-way? Or a part of an FTE that's going into it?
There was in FY
I know that we have in the past, but it looks.
22. Some of this has to do with if we've had turnover compared to previous salaries and current salaries. So if you're looking line to line, if that's what you're looking at.
Yeah, I'm just looking, it went up 100,000, 110 between FY 21 and 22, and it looks like we're gonna go up another 70 or so.
From 21 to 22, there was an additional FTE.
Yeah, that's what I remember, but,
For the
just
project
wondering
team.
whether we're adding another, or is that just wage adjustments?
Yeah, and then it just has to do with turnover and the team not being full in the FY 22. So there's reductions in that budget related to. I try to work really hard to not have money sitting in a budget that I know we're not going to spend, especially when we're looking at cutting or balancing a budget. If I know or believe we're not going to spend money, I don't want it sitting in that budget in hopes that something might happen. So I try to err on that side. So I've done an adjustment to the FY 22 budget, knowing that we had some openings for a period of time. And then in FY 23, we're looking at fully staffed.
Thanks, Madam President. I think Dave's done a great job, and of getting stuff to us that we don't need to hold on to and can get onto the property tax rolls. But there's still a ton out there.
Absolutely.
And so to the extent we obviously need staff in order to do that evaluation and find out what's out there, instead of waiting for someone to bring it to us. It's real important because while it doesn't reflect necessarily in the short term, it does in the long term by shifting it. So I just express that I would be very supportive of continuing to expand the ability of staff to evaluate what should be on the private rolls.
Okay.
Thanks.
Wonderful, thank you. Okay, on page 21, this is where you'll see the significant decrease mostly in the operational budget related to those that new department of 1,300. So you'll see that there were there decreases related to FTEs that were moved, as well as a bulk of the changes being in the operational budget. In FY 22, it's at about $4 million, and it goes down to about $950,000. Most of that being moved into the budget for 1,300, but a bulk of it also being the fire suppression upgrade, the gate upgrade, and the other major projects that we've had going on at the district. So those changing those mid project is a little can be tricky on the explanation side of that. Showing it without explaining it, excuse me. On page 23, we start the fleet services budget. So fleet services, in FY 22, we did an adjustment with the addition of the fleet manager position, which was filled last March. So we're seeing that as an ongoing. We also have seen a lot of turnover in our mechanics, so we're working through that. HR is working through that battle right now. Again, as you can see, we have starting at the bottom is our maintenance equipment. Now the difference between maintenance equipment and mobile equipment and equipment leases. So maintenance equipment cannot move itself. So it's a trailer or it's an aero board or the like, anything like that needs something to help it move. Mobile equipment are the vehicles and stuff that do move said stuff. And then, so through this process, we have been looking at the schedules related to a lot of ability to receive the equipment. So there are significant changes to 22 and 23. In fact, one of the bucket trucks that we've ordered won't be here till FY 24. So we're continuing to work through those processes, and then the companies are also. We have specifically in the 670 budget, we have several dump trucks that everything's here except the dump cylinder, which is the thing that lifts it up so that it can dump. And so it's $1 million that we can't spend because they can't finish those pieces of equipment. So we're pushing those. Hopefully we'll have those by December. But again, we're kind of at the mercy of vendors, because they're scrambling to be able to get those too. Joe's done an amazing job at keeping me abreast and speaking accounting language to a equipment person. So that's been really, really helpful, but I would anticipate that we see some additional changes in the years. It's gonna take several years for us to kind of get caught back up. First it was chips, and then now we're running into some other component issues as expected.
It's a challenge.
It is a challenge.
Madam President and
Mr. Hanson.
Christine, I'm looking for the prioritization we made of basically vehicles to maintain protected bike lanes. The rationale for not protecting them is we can't maintain them with the big equipment. We purchased one small piece of equipment. I know Jennifer probably could answer this. And I see skid steer, there's an additional skid steer. I don't know if that's referring to it, but just wanted to see where in the budget it's reflected our increasing the amount of the small lanes, the bike lanes, and the multi-use paths, that we need small equipment. It doesn't need to be complicated. A skid steer with a broom seems to be sufficient, but.
Madam President, Commissioner Hanson, again, great question across the board. My director's report today at 11:30 will be a walking tour for all of you over to the Adams facility to take a look at our newest purchase that will answer your question. And if the commission is good with that, then we will adjust accordingly. But you'll see that today at 11:30.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Madam President. I know the cost of that one, I don't know if this is the one we looked at months ago, which seemed awfully high for the maintenance role. The other is that I know we have contracts, or we have a relationship with the city of Boise. I don't know if other cities, like the multi-use path on Federal Way, that's partly, we do part of it, and the city of Boise's, I assume, Parks Department or whatever does the other part. Where that would be reflected, or we just sort of do it as a wash, because we don't reflect it in the budget. So the contracts that we would do for multi-use paths, protected multi-use paths.
So if the work, Madam President, Commissioner Hanson, so if the work's completed by our staff, then those budgets are done within the overall wages budget, and then it's coded against the piece of equipment. Unless we buy a specific piece of equipment in a certain year, we're not going to budget for that specifically. That just comes out of the use of the equipment and staff time. So those items that they are in the budget, they're not specifically called out.
Right.
When those duties are done, they are coded in their timesheets appropriately. I mean, as appropriately as they are done, with being able to capture those costs, but it's not a specific line item that our staff spends X amount of time or X amount of dollars on that. So it's more on the job cost use space.
Okay.
But the equipment would definitely be called out in here, like the mini sweeper. Okay. Sorry, let me make sure I'm on the right page here. On page 24, hang on, I'm not even on page 24.
Where's the mini sweeper?
The mini sweeper is in the FY22 budget. Yeah, so it won't be shown in as a line item in here. It'll be in the 670 budget for FY22.
So, Madam President, so I take that then we're not getting any additional mini sweepers, even though we're adding substantially more protected lanes?
Well, this time until we, now that we have the unit, we'll be able to work through use and assure that it something we want to continue with and go forward purchasing more. If you'll remember, this is a piece of equipment that at last year's budget hearing, the commission directed us to purchase it, so we purchased it during the budget process.
Madam President, Commissioner Hanson, again, all great questions, and I'm not going to ask Jennifer to hobble up here such on this. The intent is today for you to take a look at this. We're going to put this through its paces. If it pans out to be operationally smart, and we have the great operation plan behind it. I'll be coming back to you in the near future to say, here are some things we'd like you to consider moving forward as an answer to the continued struggles we've had when it comes to multi-use pathways, bike lanes, those sort of things. You're also going to see later on today in a work session our staff's review of the Maple Grove thing. So I'd ask you to hold your thoughts, and we'll work through this, but I think you'll all be happy when we're all said and done.
Okay.
Thank you.
Excuse me, on page 24, you'll see, and throughout this, we have done a really good job. Joe does a great job again of making sure that we identify which pieces of equipment we're replacing so that the departments kind of know and can anticipate what we're looking at there. They're continued on page 26. So again, on page 26, you'll see right before the equipment leases, you'll see a significant amount of about $1.3 million of funds that we're rescheduling from FY22 to FY23 based on timing. So Ford just updated their website based on production, and we're not gonna get our 1 tons until likely November, December. So we're gonna go ahead and push that money into FY23, and then the dump trucks again, as I spoke about with the dump cylinders. On the equipment leases, so these are items that we go out to bid on as normal, and then depending on what the market is currently, Sherwin does the analysis and comes forward with you to whether or not to approve a lease for the district, depending on if it's economically viable. So you'll see that. And then on page 27, and there's a lot of different pieces of equipment that we lease and some that we purchase. It just kind of depends on, again, on the market and stuff, where we are. You can see that if it has a lease number assigned, we're in an existing lease. If it doesn't, those are proposed, but there are times when, in fact, we just purchased 6 sweepers outright rather than lease them because the market rates were not in the best interest of the district. And then we have the costs of light duty vehicle maintenance and repairs. This has to do with oil changes and stuff. There are some operational changes I know that could be coming to the district with changing the items that are in-house versus outsourced. So we'll continue to monitor those budgets and go along there. So it looks like FY23 has a big increase in the in the fleet budget, specifically related to that equipment that we've kind of had to push. The other thing that's also pushed into FY23 is the radios. So we're doing a lot of analysis on radios and to try and figure out what the best method is for us to switch from analog to digital. I think that's the switch. On page 28, we start the Adams Maintenance Division. There's not really any significant changes here. One of the biggest increases is related to the liquid asphalt, which is anticipating us to have at least 2 full chip seal crews next year. So it kind of seems to, it's our hope, and with some changes currently, we got the new chipper, and so we're hoping to be able to continue to reach all of the areas that are needing reach for that. Again, this is something that as needed and if needed throughout the budget year, we can adjust these items for flagging and any other additional projects. The manhole color contract is something that that started a few years ago. It's been very popular. There's several manholes that are identified, and they just kind of work through. This contractor goes in and raises them up. So what happens is you end up with that differentiation after several years of chip seal where they're big bumps, and so we're going around and trying to fix those, but there is a limited capacity on the contractor that can do those. On page 30 is the Cloverdale budget. Again, this has to do with, you'll notice in the salaries and wages, This has to do with, there are several job openings there that aren't shown. By the time the budget's fully balanced, all of those positions will be in there as hold open positions, but I'll at least get those financials in there to be able to reflect the appropriate costs anticipated. The Cloverdale crew also, they have the bridge crew and the vegetation crew, which are two crews that Adams does not have. So there are some additional costs related to that. And also at Cloverdale, it is, Adams takes care of paying for all of the liquid asphalt, and then Cloverdale takes care of the chips and the crushing contract. On a go-forward basis, of course, we'll have to look at if that's going to change or what the proposal is as we continue to grow. So it is again through this budget on page 31. I apologize, Commissioner Pickering, if I'm turning pages and not verbalizing it. On page 31 toward the bottom, you'll see our tree trimming contract, weed control contract, and then the crushing contract that is specifically related to the vegetation crew stuff. On page 32 is the USTIC budget. So this has to do with obviously the people at USTIC. There will be significant changes to the FY22 budget. When the FY22 budget was originally proposed, we had anticipated maybe a little smoother process forward with the City of Meridian. So there are going to be some changes related to those budgeted items. We're still maintaining to hire the approved, I think 10 or 11 FTEs related to that. But if they're doing work out of Cloverdale, from an accounting perspective, we want to maintain the clear delineation there. We don't want to have two piles of gravel, for instance, at Cloverdale, one called Cloverdale and one called USTIC. That's not something that the accounting department nor the auditors want to deal with. So from that perspective, we are maintaining most of that stuff at Cloverdale because that's where they're being housed out of. But in the next several years, of course, we'll see a lot of those changes going, and we'll be seeing a more robust USTIC budget. On page 23 is Development and Technical Services Management. This is Ryan Head and his assistant. And that has to do with just their wages are the most thing in there, and then minimal amounts related to operational expenditures. On page 34, so 34 is design, is the design budget. There are 2 FTEs from design that were moved into that new utility department, 1197. Excuse me. So you'll notice that change. We had 2 locators that were approved a couple years ago, maybe last year, and then now we've moved them again. We're just trying to find the best place for them to land to ensure that we're capturing our costs appropriately. This is also where the survey equipment is. Excuse me, on page 35, you will see that we have $130,000 for new GPS survey equipment. We purchased survey equipment several years ago, and as the market continues to change and there's new advancements, we're wanting to continue to stay relevant in that realm to be sure that we're providing the best information to the design engineers. On page 36 is the environmental budget. And I will say that so many of these departments, you'll see under temporaries, there's student interns, and our student interns just do such a great job. There's several student interns that we have that now are full-time employees, and it's really great to see that throughout the district. So the biggest thing in the environmental budget is, of course, the NPDES monitoring contract, the revegetation of the swales and the basins. and then mostly compliance-related expenditures. On page 37, you'll see construction. These are all of our construction construction and project inspectors. They're the inspectors hired by the district that are out on our job sites for those projects that we hire contractors for. This is where they reside. We had purchased this year non-nuke gauges to replace some nuke gauges. This is as much as I know about them this year, so that we can continue to maintain a safe operation and the availability of necessary equipment for our staff. So these are those that are out on our job sites all day, every day. Whenever the contractor's there, we do have them there. So there's a lot of work and a lot of overtime paid to those people, especially while we're laying asphalt.
Madam President?
Commissioner Hanson?
Yeah, and this question might be for Justin as well, or for Steve. When we know one of our capital projects, which we budgeted for, is going to have anticipated additional environmental problems, issues, that it's going to require an increase in its budget. We know that going into the next fiscal year. Does that get reflected in the environmental budget, or does that get reflected in the capital budget for that project? Even though it's, of course, our environmental staff will be dealing with it.
Madam President, Commissioner Hanson, typically those are added to our design contracts. So we do have environmental staff from ACHD on all of those project teams, but we typically add that to the scope of work related needing to the design of the overall project, so that we can assure that we're getting that appropriate information. Is that a fair depiction?
That's where we see it. We'll see it reflected.
Madam President, Commissioners, part of the question is when, for instance, we have a project, we can anticipate that we're going to have an environmental issue, then we would put that in the budget as an estimate. But if that, and we do a lot of the internal stuff, but that additional cost would be by outside consultants. And as Christine had mentioned, that would be part of the design contract. It's usually in that, but to the extent that we have to expend any more money on environmental, which is coordinated with our environmental team, then those would be reflected in a budget adjustment in the future.
And it would be in next week's budget that we'll be talking about for those particular projects.
Right. And those costs would also be capitalized as part of the project.
Correct, yeah. Madam President, Commissioner Hanson, one thing, if it's an environmental something that comes up after the project's complete, depending on the magnitude of that project, will depend if it turns into another capital project or if it's handled on the operational side, depending on kind of where we are, what kind of issue it is, if it's something we're going to go in and fix.
Thank you.
You're welcome. My pleasure. Okay, on page 39 is traffic. Oh, hang on. Wait. I already turned my page. Page 38 is traffic operations. This is where our utility, or our signal, our paints, our signal engineers are, electronic engineers, replacing all the signs. So a lot of their expenditures, aside from the labor costs, are supplies and materials and those things to be able to get those. Now, a lot of this, on page 39, a lot of the expenditures related, maybe not a lot, let me rephrase that. There are some sign expenses that are revenue neutral, because when we purchase, or when we do signs for a new neighborhood, we do receive revenue as street name signs for that. But any of the replacement or the like of those items, ACHD does pay the maintenance cost on those, but there is a revenue associated with the developers who get new signs for their new subdivisions. You'll also notice in here that we've got, we have just under $1 million related to, paint for each year, and then we'll see, we could see increases in that depending on where we're chip sealing, what we're chip sealing, what kind of paint we need, so we'll make those fluctuations. So as you see adjustments in the maintenance budget with, chip seal, with, crushing, liquid asphalt, you'll also see that in the paint, department also, to ensure that we, can fully support that. On page 40 is the traffic engineers. This is where congestion management sits, the TMC. Those individuals doing ADA, our ADA compliance coordinator is in there. So a lot of their books and dues and subscriptions are related to their PE licenses. We do have this is where the new project or the project on Eagle Road for all of the signal enhancements and the radar stuff was done in conjunction with ITD, and we were able to recognize some enough additional funding from ITD on the revenue side. Annually, they do a couple analyses on signal timing. They also have speed bump installations and rehab in this account. In fact, I know that in second adjustments, you will be seeing some additional funding requested for some traffic calming replacement installations through in a couple areas in the valley, which I want to say upwards of Vanille. Is that right? Yeah? All right. Oh boy, sorry about this. On page 42 is the world's smallest printed budget. And I apologize greatly. This is development services. So this is where our engineering techs, most development and technical services, engineering techs, planners, impact fee administrator, and the like are in this department with bridge inspections, our drone pilots, and stuff. So the big thing that I point out on this budget is on the line 2 from the bottom is the traffic impact study review and the CIP update. So this has to do with the upcoming CIP update that will be in full force shortly. Statutorily, we have to be approving that every 4 years. Okay, on page 43 is the revenue related to commuter ride. I was notified of a few changes, so this will be updated. We got notice that they're canceling our purchase of vans that we had made this year, just based on the vendor can't get them. So we'll be pushing that money into next year and looking to add those additional vans in FY23. In the meantime, Tessa's doing an analysis to see about other types of vans to get, if there's some minivans or other rideshare opportunities there. So again, we're looking just about a $2.8 million budget for commuter ride. One of the items, and then on page 44, one of the items that will be in here also is one of the new grants that we've received is supporting a part-time FTE. So I'll have more details on that and get that added into the budget and the revenue side. Reflective of that, I think it's appropriate for 3 years. And then on page 45, we are looking at, they're working through some software for van pool management. Currently, it's a very manual process that's done with in-house staff. There's a lot of opportunities for improvements in efficiency and greater reach and easier use by the general public. So we're looking at that. That's just kind of a placeholder right now. We're still exploring that, and we'll continue to, again, revise that as we go. So with that, I know it's looks a lot different than it has in the past. I appreciate your flexibility with this. If there are any additional questions related to the budget, I'm happy to answer them.
Okay, Commissioner McKinney.
Madam President, Christine, let's see, help me understand what I'm seeing on pages 43 versus 44 and 45, because they all relate to commuter ride,
Yeah,
but.
it's not quite balanced.
Are the amounts shown on 44 and 45 included in the amounts that are here on 43? Because I thought that our total commuter ride budget was about 2.8 million.
I apologize, Madam President, Commissioner McKinney. I apologize. On page 43, that is the revenue related to commuter ride. And on
Okay.
pages 44 and 45 are the expenditures. Now,
All right,
in the final budget, those numbers will match.
okay.
We're pretty close right now. I like to call it my ish factor. But,
We all have one of those.
man, mine gets bigger every year. But that's the difference, is that we have commuter ride. And as you'll see in the commuter ride budget, we have the $215,000 from ACHD General Fund proposed.
All right, any other questions or comments for Christine? Great job.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. A lot of information there.
So, just to give you a heads up on kind of what I'm working on, so I'm gonna continue to work on and update the wages and the salaries related to this. I've received several emails over the last couple days that I've just kind of had to push aside to, but those adjustments will be reflected in this as well. And then we'll continue to, we're really close to being balanced. I consider it balanced. And then I'm hoping to have more detail even next week at the capital budget presentation, and then any revisions that come from the comments today or next week, I'll have in an updated packet to you prior to the August 4th final work session in preparation for going out to bid. I'm sorry, I'm not going out to bid. To going out to publication.
This is all subject to low bid, right?
Yeah, you get what you pay for, that's why I'm here. Publication in preparation for the adoption on August 24th.
A lot of numbers.
Holy fright.
Thank you, Christine.
Thanks.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciate it, thanks.
All right, with that, so we have a little bit of a break.
I invite you all to have some birthday cake.
I didn't know Christine's position was a bid.
I know.
Well, you know, you get what you pay for with low bid. Sometimes.
We do know that.
or questions that any of the commissioners have? All right, any comments or questions about our agenda? All right, hearing none, Director Wong?
Thank you.
Madam President, I can't hear the director.
Oh, excuse me. Commissioner Pickering, did you have a comment?
How about now?
Perfect.
Thank you, ma'am. IT will talk afterwards. Commissioners, a little different today for the director's report. What I'd like to do is invite all of you to join our superintendent at Adams for a walking tour over Adams. We'd like to show you Idaho's very first mini sweeper called the multi-hog, if I'm not mistaken, and such, and the capabilities that that system can and will bring to the district for all sorts of different operations, to include multi-use pathways, bike lanes, you name it, across the board. So if you could come with us, we're going to go across the street.
We can do that right now? All right. So we will just, yes, be at ease and take this walk.
I'll be there in spirit next time. Oh, I can't hear you,
Give
Bruce.
this demonstration to you always.
Okay, thank you. I'll be there soon.
Oh, and cake. Thank you. Stacy, did you cut that cake?
I did.
You're such a doll. I will definitely try.
So what do you want?
It would be, yeah. That's where
Madam
we need to
President,
ride along.
Commissioners, good afternoon. It's now 12 o'clock.
All right, welcome everyone. If you'd please stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America,
And to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, the first item on our agenda is to adopt the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Next, consent agenda. Items on the consent agenda are considered to be routine and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion on these items unless a commissioner or citizen so requests, in which case the item will be removed from the consent agenda and placed on the regular agenda. All consent agenda items are commission action items unless noted. Do we have a motion?
Madam President, I move that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Is there a second?
Yes, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 All right, motion passes. All right. That takes us down to our regular agenda. We have one item on our regular agenda, Capital Investment Citizen Advisory Committee nomination. This is an action item. And are we just having a discussion, or Stacy, are you presenting something, or no?
No.
Okay. Okay, so this is just before the commission. I want to frame our discussion today that it's policy-based. We're going to take a look at our policy. The current policy that we have does state that the nominee must live in the district of the nominating agency. And in this case, that is not the case in this situation. The nominee does live in the city of Boise. So this seat is for the unincorporated portion of a. I do want to, for the sake of our discussion, and again, it's just based on our policy, that we have put a concerted effort in the last several years to make sure that we have an equitable representation in all of our advisory committees. And if this nomination is approved as it's presented, then that does create a little bit of an unbalance in the composition of this committee. So it is before us for a discussion. One of the other precedents that we have is in the past that we have denied other nominees because they have been prior employees of the district. So to include the business partner of the current nominee. So those are all considerations that I'd like to have in our discussion. So if we can just keep it directed towards our policy, I'll open it up, and commissioners, like to hear from you.
Madam President? Go ahead, Alexis.
Sorry, Commissioner Pickering.
Oh, okay. I was willing for you to go first, Commissioner Goldberg, but anyway, I'll go first. So, Madam President, I really appreciate you framing the discussion and wanting to, our intentions are, and that we have good representation across the board. But I think, and maybe my memory isn't serving me well, but I remember that there was some confusion about the Ada County position because it could be challenging to find someone in unincorporated Ada County versus someone from a city. I remember that being a conversation that we might have had. We might have not have obviously settled on that kind of, giving them kind of free reign to have anybody be from anywhere representing the county. So I just remember that being part of the conversation. And I think, obviously I want to make sure that we're well balanced. We've got folks from all of our cities and communities well represented on each of our advisory groups. But I think in being a good partner, and I know that the Ada County commissioners know what's best for who they want to represent them on the advisory group. So I'm of the mindset to approve their request and just be a good partner and, kind of have, I think that's kind of my mindset at this point.
Okay, thank you for that, Commissioner Pickering. I kind of recall a little bit about that discussion. The unincorporated portion of Ada County is rather large and widespread. There are a lot of talented individuals out there. I do live pretty close to one out in the West End where I live. We had a commissioner from the unincorporated portion of Ada County. So I do think that there is a population that we could possibly have a member from. It's pretty, and I think Commissioner Goldthorpe, you've got some unincorporated Ada County out towards you, out in that section. I certainly do, and I think, Commissioner Hanson, I'm not sure if you touch on some of that. So, but thank you for mentioning the balance. I think that's really important, because we do have the 6 cities in the unincorporated area, and I do believe that there are a lot of people out there that could benefit here and be beneficial to the committee. So, Mr. Goldthorpe.
Sure. I'm approaching this from a completely different standpoint. I realize what our policy is. I also understand what our history is as far as approvals. I'm a little, I'm scratching my head a little bit because I've been on boards before where we had representatives from Ada County, and they could be from the county at large. The Air Quality Board was my last experience where that was the case. I hope you don't take me wrong what I say next, because it's political. I know the politics of our current Ada County Commission, and I was more than just a little surprised that they unanimously recommended Mr. Kostelik. But that speaks in a very positive way to some very open and broad minds. I haven't had any conversation with any of the commissioners about this because I specifically didn't want to. I know Mr. Kostelik. I know there's some fear that he's going to be kind of an agitating influence on a committee. I don't know if that's something that's needed on this committee or not. I haven't spent any time with this committee. I have personally have absolutely no problem having Mr. Kostelik on the committee, because I think that whoever is the committee chair or whoever oversees this in terms of staff, if there's anything that happens policy-wise or any otherwise that is considered to be, quote, getting out of hand, that changes can be made. But this is my opinion. I think that, again, the county probably knows best, and I don't have a moment's worth of hesitation to have somebody on the committee who's a professional. I'm sorry that Chris didn't have a chance to serve on it, but anyway, that's just it. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Goldthorpe. Appreciate it. Commissioner McKinney.
From a procedural and policy standpoint, I think it is generally unwise to establish a policy and then just sort of step back. It suggests that we hadn't really thought through the policy, or we didn't really have any good reasons for it. And that would be the case here. Plus, so I don't think it's wise for us to say that we want someone from the unincorporated part of the county for these reasons. And then when a nominee is put forward who doesn't meet those qualifications, we just say, oh, well, never mind. You know, we didn't really mean it. I don't think that is wise. I think, as you mentioned, there are plenty of Ada County residents in the unincorporated part of the county that could fill this position. And as far as specifics of this nomination are concerned, let me just say this. Mr. Kostelik has specifically addressed me and told me that because I disagree with his preferences for bicycle and pedestrian facilities, that I must want people to die. And I take that kind of an accusation. It's hard not to take that kind of accusation personally. But in any event, it tells me that he is an ideologue, and in many cases, not always looking at the facts and deciding things based on pure rationality, but rather emotion. And I think it would be unwise to have someone like that on this committee. And for that reason, for all those reasons, I would oppose this nomination.
All right, thank you very much. Commissioner Hanson?
Madam President, I agree with Commissioner Goldthorpe's comments. I would make a motion that we approve the appointment, the nomination by the Ada County. They made this choice. Approve Ada County's appointment, and to do so waiving any limitations for him to serve as a member of the CICAC as their representatives, as long as they would like him on that committee.
Madam President?
We have a motion, Commissioner
Yeah,
Goldberg?
just one last little bit because,
Want to second it, and then we can
And
discuss?
we can have a discussion.
oh, sure. Has it been seconded?
No.
I'll second it then.
Okay, so we have a motion before us. Now we're open to discussion.
Can
Sure.
Further discussion?
I'll speak to the motion.
Let him, he was just starting and we.
And I'm just going to kind of bounce off what Commissioner McKinney said because I've also been at the brunt end of some of those comments. I choose not to take anything personally in this life because it helps my blood pressure a whole lot. And as I mentioned before, our committee membership is something that ultimately is the commission's purview and responsibility to maintain, and it's our responsibility to maintain. We hope that we don't ever have to maintain the aspects involving professionalism and courtesy and that sort of thing, but it's possible in this case that we might someday, which is perfectly within my capability, but I think Mr. Costello will prove to be a benefit to the committee, not a detraction.
Okay,
Thank
so,
you. That's
further discussion on that. I just want everybody to just be, when we have a policy, we just finished that policy. It is important to put a lot of thought into it so that we don't have to come back and address it and, it wasn't quite what we wanted, so we're gonna have a waiver. We need to keep in mind that we have 6 cities plus the unincorporated. So now, with Boise, so I guess I question why Boise did not nominate, this nominee for their seat on there. And we're still leaving a very broad expanse open for representation on the committee. So that's a valid concern. And so you have 5 other cities now that are going to perhaps take issue or object by creating this precedent. And so I just think it bears some thoughtful consideration before we move forward. Another thing that I wanted to throw out there, that we do have the ability to have an ex officio member on there, and the nominee would fit in that category, be part of it, could share his expertise, in which we all agree, that he has and is certainly well qualified to participate. But then that would give the county more time to look for somebody that actually lives in the area, so we don't have that void of representation on the committee. I just think that's very important to have. And, there might be, and I don't know, Mr. Kostelik in person, but I am understanding that he does do work for the city of Boise, so he's working for them and getting paid by them. So that does give a little bit more weight to one entity. So I'm just anticipating we may have some issue from some of the other members of the committee. So I think that kind of bears a little bit of part of the discussion as well. But I would like to see if there's an appetite for the ex officio, and I'd be happy to make a substitute motion to that effect. Commissioner Hanson, back to you.
Yeah, to speak to my motion, I think unlike any of our other advisory committees, this one is dependent upon nominations from our partners, Ada County and the other cities. The geographic limitations that Ada County somehow has a diminishing pool as cities annex just doesn't make sense. So it does raise the issue of if that's our policy for the CICAC, maybe we should relook that policy. We have a much stronger policy that says our partners should select, we should defer to them to have people representing their interests on this advisory board that they choose. And that to say, we don't want you to have this person representing your interests. I don't think, as I would agree with Commissioner May's initial comment, that this should be about these policies and not about the personality of the individual involved. We also waive policies quite often, sometimes on staff's recommendations. The other is, of course, this is still an advisory board. It can take no legal action other than just advise. And the value of advice is improved when you have diverse views and ideas that are discussed and people feed off that knowledge. And so that's the way the county has chosen to make their selection, and they've come back and asked that we waive the policy. I think that's wise, and it's, you know, unlike any other advisory committee like our bike or pedestrian, where we do split up and make sure people represent the different parts of the county. They're not nominated by those cities. They submit their names, and then we nominate and select them. So I think this makes a whole lot of sense, that we will get some good advice, and we will either follow it or we won't from the CICAC. So thank you.
And I think that, thank you. And I do think that's apparent, and I hope that's apparent to the nominee, that we all appreciate and recognize his talent and his expertise. I just, with the growth that we're having, I don't want the unincorporated portion of Ada County not to have a voice and to be disenfranchised. So that's why I was suggesting that perhaps we might want to explore the ex officio membership right now and see if we, because I know there are a lot of talented people out there, and that the county perhaps is not aware of. So that would be my position, and that would get Mr. Kostelek on there, and he would be able to provide his expertise, and we could still then have that one area that's not represented, because I do think that's important, and I think maybe some of the other cities might have an issue with that. So that's just where I'm coming from, but I appreciate the conversation and the way it's going. Yeah. Commissioner Goldthorpe.
I would agree with that 100%, except for the fact that we've had this position open for months and months and months, and we haven't. I thought we'd addressed this more than once, but
correct information in the timeline. Okay,
well, anyway, my opinion that I was going to express was that there's been a lot of time passed for the county commission to you know, drag the lake, as I might say, to find somebody who would come forward. Nobody has, and so the recommendation has stayed the same, and so we need to deal with it.
Did they put out? I don't know anything about how.
Again, I don't either.
So I just, you know, I'm very inclusive. I just want to make sure everybody feels, you know, that we're following our policy and that all areas are represented. Because I think we have seen a huge difference with our other advisory committees, how we are trying to balance that representation, because district to district, it's different.
Well, I don't disagree, but in many of our other committees, we've had a list of people, as long as your arm, who wanted to be on it.
But I think we're moving in the right direction there. So,
Madam
Commissioner
President,
McKinney.
let me just ask a question. Is, as far as this committee is concerned, at the moment, is the committee not adequately staffed to be able to function? Are we below that point where it can't function because it doesn't have enough members?
Mr. Price, I don't believe so. Mr. Price, would you like to address that?
Madam President, Commissioner McKinney, Ada County currently does have a representative on the committee. And I think the nomination is to replace that person, but the committee's functioning just.
Okay.
And even if it was empty, we would still have enough for a quorum under the current bylaws.
Okay. So that, all the more reason why I don't think we should go forward with this nomination, why we shouldn't approve this nomination.
Any other further comments? Part of my discussion was the appetite for ex officio. Is there any?
If I may, that is something I might be willing to consider, but all in all, at the present moment, no. I think the appropriate thing to do right now is simply not to approve this nomination.
Okay. You know, being involved with the unincorporated portions of Ada County, I know there are a lot of people out there, so I hope you can appreciate my hesitancy that we're going to have somebody from Boise who already is represented on there fulfill the slot for the unincorporated Ada County. I don't believe someone that lives out and is close to this area and I do know many people out there, have not had a conversation with anybody about applying for that. I just don't want to, hear, oh, well, there's nobody out there, we're annexing all the land, and, you know, it's dwindling, because there's a lot of talent out there, a lot of people that could do it, so.
Madam President.
And it's not a personal anything, it's just, you know, I just want to make sure everybody has a shot at this. Commissioner Pickering, please.
I just have one more thought. I mean, to Commissioner Hansen's point about the other advisory committees, you know, I think with BAC, ADA, and the Pedestrian Advisory Group, you know, it's really important that they all come from very diverse communities, because there are eyes and ears about what those treatments, you know, should be or what can be improved, right? Versus the CIC, it's much more policy driven. And I think Mr. Kostelek has the expertise, he has a brilliant mind to be able to understand what the county's policy needs are as it relates to this work. So I think specifically as what's been mentioned before from Commissioner Goldthorpe and Commissioner Hansen, you know, we all want to have diverse representation, but I think in this case too, I think Mr. Kostelek and the county have I think Mr. Kostelek has demonstrated that he can have great skills and understanding and how the county can benefit from certain policies and represent them effectively in that way. So again, that's why I think we should just go ahead and vote for the motion that's on the table and approve, because they know what's best.
Okay, thank you.
One last thing.
Commissioner Goldthorpe.
And this is a very sarcastic full disclosure attempt on my part. When I first ran for office, Mr. Kostelek gave me $50, and this isn't buying my vote.
I think
Somebody will pick up on that, so I thought I'd better mention it.
Madam President,
Commissioner Hansen.
I would just say that we rely on the 6 cities and the county to make nominations, and as soon as those people fail to represent their interest, they will ask that they be replaced, and they can do that. So that's the function of the CICAC, is they have representatives from the entities. All 3 county commissioners actually live in the city limits, but they'll be the first one to tell you they represent the entire county, all the citizens, all of whom vote in the county election. So this is really about who's going to represent the county, and our policy is we let the county decide who is their representative. And I'm sure that's the case when they hire or appoint to a variety of different other committees, who's going to best represent the county. And that's what they're elected to decide, and that's what they've asked for. So I'd like to respect that.
Okay, I so noted, and I just want correction that our policy is not to let the Ada County decide who best represents them. We do have a specific policy, and you know, there is merit in that each, it was important to us to make sure that we had that representation. So it does say that the nominees must reside in the area of the nominating agency. So I just want to make that clear. So that's what we are waiving. So if there aren't any other comments, then we will go ahead and call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
No.
Right, motion carries. And I don't know if Mr. Kostelek is on Zoom or not, but welcome aboard. So, all right, our next item, public communication. Is there anybody here to do that? Okay, I'm going to just add something that I was going to share during our pre-commission, that last night I was at the BAC, and this is a topic of conversation that we'd had several years ago, and then we had COVID, et cetera, and never picked up the ball. But Mr. Gary Seegers brought up the fact that it might be a good idea for the BAC to come in and do an annual update to the commission. And since it's kind of a Russian roulette as to what commissioners and how many commissioners go to these meetings, and we're not there to interact really, we're there to listen and to learn and to come back. And so they get just kind of a shotgun approach to, you know, what the commission is thinking. So I think that's a valuable thing. I told them last night that I thought that was a great idea. I'd like to see that go forward, not just for the BAC, but for all of our advisory committee meetings. So I'm going to reach out to all the chairs and we're going to line that up. And right now, of course, it'll be an annual update, but I think it's good to get them before us, let us know what their goals are, what they've accomplished, what they'd like to see, because so often we just get a letter of support from something that they are supporting, and unless we go to their meetings, we really don't have that connection. So I'm going to go ahead, unless there's some type of objection from the body, that we will incorporate updates from these committees. So
Good
Madam
idea.
President, thank you. I really appreciate that. I think that's an excellent idea. I think the more we can hear directly from them rather than go through.
Yeah.
I know we have wonderful staff who staff those committees, but it puts them in a tricky position for them to then communicate to us what those discussions were about. But I also deeply appreciate you and the other commissioners who sit and listen to those conversations. I've never listened to one of these meetings where I haven't learned something.
you learn a lot.
And I learn a lot, and they also don't agree with each other. And through that discussion over disagreements, they get to deeper truths and deeper understandings, which is so helpful.
Yeah, yeah. And sometimes you learn so much more when you're not, part of the noise. So very good. So that's all that I had. We will go ahead and adjourn unless we have somebody else for public communications. All right. We are adjourned, and we will go on with our work session. Are we going to just do that here? Miss Meg. And now that you're up here, I do want to say that you do a tremendous job with the advisory committee. So I always enjoy watching you. You're very receptive and responsive, and yeah, you've just really done a good job. So I'm really glad that we benefit from having you on our team. So thank you for what you do.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Can you guys hear me okay with this?
I can hear you.
Alexis, can you hear? Okay.
Can you hear me okay? Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
Shouting.
Great. Commissioners, thank you for giving me time to present today. I'm Meg McCarthy, and I work as the Bicyclist and Pedestrian Program Coordinator, and I am here to share with you all of the things that we've heard from staff and from the public about the bike lane treatment on Maple Grove. I'll give you all some history about the project and the feedback that we've received, the studies that we've done there, and then share some proposed solutions. So first, it's really important to understand how this fits into our bike network. This segment of Maple Grove has Maple Grove Elementary on one side of the school, on one side of the street, and Molnar Park on the other. This is a residential area and it is developing, but housing is not as dense, and this area does feel a little bit more rural than other places. There's no transit on this corridor either. A section of this is part of the Hollandale-Targhee Bikeway. That's also what I'm proposing. We call the Spaghetti Bikeway, but that's the yellow line that's moving through there. And that connects multiple neighborhoods to schools, shopping, and entertainment. Maple Grove, as it continues to the north and the south, currently does not have any bike facilities, and there are also no bike facilities on Overland or Victory. There are 5-foot bike lanes on 5 Mile and on Cole, but besides that, this corridor right now is kind of acting like an island of protected facilities. Besides the Hollandale-Targhee Bikeway, it's smushed in between LTS 3 and 4 facilities. It is likely in the future, though, as we expand south on Maple Grove, that we probably will be building LTS 1 or 2 facilities there. So the background on this project is that the delineators were added after the project completed design, and it was 2016 when this project first began design. In 2018, we adopted the Bike Master Plan, and that identified a level 2 facility on Maple Grove, which was just a bike lane. The design finished in 2018, and in 2020, the bid for the project was awarded, And at that time, staff was directed to explore a bike enhancement that would be contained in the current footprint. Staff researched solutions, and in May, right when I started this job, the project manager at that time came and presented to the Bike Advisory Committee and showed examples of curbing and candles, and that was also shared with you in May. And so that was the idea moving forward, and the delineators were added into the project. They were installed during a snowstorm in the winter of 2022, and since that construction has been ongoing, there's been asphalt repair, and sections of the bike lanes have been closed for a lot of the springtime. ACHD conducted studies. We coordinated multiple site visits as staff and with our advisory committees, and change orders were submitted throughout the spring. Finally, today, I was out there last week, construction is complete. So this is what Maple Grove looks like today. We have 3-foot-high delineators, a 7-foot attached sidewalk, and a 5.5-foot bike lane. The original plan called for a 6-foot striped bike lane, and we lost 7 inches from the base of the delineator. The travel lanes are 10.5 feet, and if we use our livable street performance measures, which were adopted last year, this is a BLTS2 facility, which means it's comfortable for adults. So as soon as this was installed, because it was during the snowstorm, ACHD staff and residents had a lot of concerns. And we heard that views were obstructed at cross streets. Immediately, lots of residents said, why would you spend money on something that's so ugly? And we heard at night that the reflective tops of the posts were distracting and dangerous. And from this picture below, this was taken about a week after they were installed. Some staff have agreed with residents that it does feel more like an airport runway and less like a roadway. These posts are supposed to be able to be impacted at least 50 times by 2-ton vehicles before they will break, but we don't know about the bases, what will happen. And we also don't know how they're going to hold up when a snowplow moves through here. Chris Daly, who's sitting behind me and is the PM of this project right now, he spoke with a woman who said that teenagers were opening doors on the posts, and she had concerns about that, but she did mention that the posts popped right back up. Out of every team at ACHD, our maintenance team has the most significant concerns. This above picture shows what the bike lanes looked like after winter maintenance and when construction was still happening. It's very easy for debris to get trapped in here. As you know, we just got to see our new street sweeper, and so that can help address some of those concerns, but still, our chip seal operation is going to be complicated here, as the delineators will either need to be removed or reinstalled, or we won't be able to chip the bike lane. And then our traffic team also has concerns about the lane widths and how larger vehicles are going to fit here, and they also have site concerns and would like to see size. And then our traffic team has also mentioned the issue of painting and how that's going to be difficult as well, because again, the delineators will need to be removed and reinstalled to paint the lane. So as I mentioned before, our advisory committees visited this site in May, and they gave us some valuable feedback. They liked the concept, but they did mention that they felt trapped in the bike lane because the spacing of the delineators was such that they'd have to hop on the curb or maneuver through debris. Most of the cyclists, though, that did ride in the bike lane said that they felt like they were on a bike superhighway and that they felt less stressed than they would if it was just an arterial roadway with a striped bike lane. The advisory committees also talked about the context of this roadway and how this is a treatment they would like to see repeated, but in a corridor that is more central and popular to our bike network. The PAG has submitted a letter of support for this project. I think Cynthia sent it off on Monday. And to date, ACHD has received 9 calls and 12 telex from neighbors. 2 of the tellus were positive and 3 of the negative reports were from the same individual. The negative feedback has been that vehicles feel squeezed. Neighbors have said they are finding themselves having to pull out further at cross streets to be able to see over the candles. Many neighbors have said that the amount is too many, the posts are too tall, and the reflective tops make driving at night and turning onto cross streets or out of cross streets dangerous because of the glare. Many have expressed that the corridor was just plain ugly, and they also have said, why would we construct this, because nobody rides a bike here anyway. Since construction has completed, though, we have not received a negative tellus that is not from the same individual who submitted 3. Since construction's completed, we've received more positive comments, and we've received comments like this one that's included here on our social media. When I visited the site last, I tried to find the worst of the posts, and I did find this one, and you can see it has been impacted by a vehicle, but it's still standing, and we don't know, what kind of vehicle it was, but there's some evidence of them being hit. So because we've heard that people don't bike here, we went and did bike and pedestrian counts, and we did multiple counts. We did counts while school was in session. That was the March counts, and that was done. We did counts in May, and that was when construction was still happening, and those were counts that only occurred in the bike lane, and those were tube counts. And then we also did counts in the hot heat of summer, just right at the intersection of Molnar Park. And every single time that we've counted between 0 to 20 pedestrians and 0 to 15 cyclists. All of these samples do have their limitations, and as the bicyclist and pedestrian coordinator, this is not a significant amount of cyclists, although it does demonstrate that the facilities are being used. Since the road was widened, we have seen a slight increase of speed. The speed limit there is 35 miles per hour, and 37 miles per hour was observed. But speed studies are also done when traffic is free flowing. So at peak times, it might be that traffic is responding how we were expecting, and that we've designed the road to make people drive the speed limit, and it might be that they are. So I've shared a lot of information with you, and as you can gather from this presentation, there are trade-offs between all the different modes that are using this corridor, and we want to ensure that we're building something that is going to be the safest option for all users of our roadway. We also want to make sure that the context of this area is taken into account, and building something like this, the maintenance of a facility like this is not going to be without significant challenges, and we're going to have to adapt and change things. And I think another important thing that should be considered are, what do our policies, documents, and guidances say, and that might help guide you in the decision. Commissioners, based on this analysis, staff does not believe that we can just leave the corridor the way that it is right now. So we've identified 3 options for you to decide. So the first option is to maintain the protected facility throughout the corridor. Our traffic team is originally who said that 3 feet is too high, but across the project team, we agree that 3 feet is too high, and 2 feet is too close. So all of the posts would be reduced to 18 inches, and every other post and base would be removed. That's option 1. Another option would be to maintain the protected facility, but only the segment that is part of the low stress bikeway. So if you recall that map, that would be the short little yellow segment. And so that would be every post south of Targhee and north of Ottawa. Every other post would be removed. They would still be reduced to 18 inches, but it would only be that small segment. The last option is to just remove all of the delineators. To do that, it would require patching and filling in all of the bolt holes, and that's going to create a BLTS3 facility here, which goes against what we're trying to do. So staff's recommendation here is to recommend option A. Staff has reached a consensus among everybody that this is the option that we want to go with. Option A will reduce the height of all posts to 18 inches and every other post and base will be removed. This is at a cost of an estimated $35,000, and I've included this picture that shows what the 18-inch post looks like next to the 3 feet post. This is where a traffic team went out and did say there are significant site concerns here that are affecting safety, and so that picture is included so you can kind of see the difference. This option would also maintain our BLTS2 facility, and staff is aware that although we are recommending this option, it's not going to be without its challenges for maintaining the facility, and we're prepared to deal with those challenges moving forward as they happen. But out of all the options, we do believe that that's the best one. And so with that, I can stand for any questions.
All right, thank you very much, Meg. Commissioners, any questions on the option?
Yes.
Commissioner Goldthorpe.
I drive this quite often, and frankly, I've been really happy with the way it's been functioning. I don't mind that the 3-foot-high delineators make you drive a little slower. I'm really surprised. Now, where are the difficulties for seeing? Where do they come from?
The difficulties seeing that our traffic team found is as you are driving north on Maple Grove, where it goes up the hill, and those cross streets, I think at Ottawa was one of them, and then whatever this cross street is that's across from Ottawa.
Okay, can maybe 2 or 3 of those delineators be whacked down to 2 feet?
Mm-hmm. That's where they made that change and reduce the height there.
Okay. Do we reduce the height just with a saw, or do we have to put in totally new?
Yeah, we have to put in totally new.
During our maintenance program, when we might have to replace the delineators and the bases, I'm thinking that possibly that if we wind up going that way, the next time we have a chip seal might be the least expensive and most efficient use of our time and resources. Do you know when this was chip sealed last? Was it last year? Okay.
No, it was just rebuilt.
I don't know.
I know we've been south of the interstate here. This is our 2nd year south of the interstate, so 2 years. Okay.
Hasn't been chip
Here
sealed
comes
at all.
the answer. The answer man.
Commissioners, for the record, Paul Daigle, Chief of Staff. Yes, sir, I believe it's scheduled to be chip sealed in 2 years.
In 2 years, so it's been a while. Thank you. Yeah, I don't mind going to option number 1. I think we could probably save ourselves a little grief by doing it all when we chip seal next time, and we're not going to cause any wrecks or anything because that's already been addressed.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments or questions? Commissioner
Yeah,
McKinney?
Madam President, Meg, let me ask you, can you give me an idea of what are the additional maintenance costs that we will have because of these delineators? For example, you mentioned striping is an issue, and of course then there's also the sweeping and so on. But then there's also the, like you say, the chip seal issue. They all have to be removed and replaced if we're going to chip seal. That's a huge cost as well, right? Didn't we just see that having them all removed, just removing all of them is $70,000, right?
That's right.
So putting them all back in after the chip seal is going to be what? Probably going to cost more, right? Probably costs less to remove than it does to reinstall.
I think it might cost more to remove actually because of the filling and the patching of every single hole from the bolts of the bases. But I'm not
Okay.
positive.
Maybe Justin has the
Here
answer.
comes some backup. Mr. Lucas.
Hi, Commissioners. For the record, Justin Lucas, Deputy Director of Planning and Projects. To be frank, Commissioners, I don't believe we've decided whether or not we will remove them for chip seal or not. I think as of right now, staff is considering options. When we come around to the chip seal in this area, I think there could be a strong case just to leave them in place and chip basically up next to them.
Chip the travel lanes and not
chip
the bike
travel
lane.
lanes and not the bike lane. Correct, Commissioner McKinney, and see how that goes. Because I think you're right. The cost to remove them and replace them as part of the chip seal would be substantial. we would likely, it would slow things down substantially as part of our chip seal effort if our in-house forces did it. And if we had to contract someone out to do it, that would even be more complicated. So I think as of right now, our ability to remove those for chip seal is pretty limited.
Right.
But those are things we have to consider.
So then let me ask, if we simply chip sealed the vehicle lanes and not the bike lane, would we then, for restriping, simply move the lane edge stripe beside the delineators and not try to put it back in its original spot? So you don't have to, all the additional complication of trying to restripe where the delineators are.
Right, Madam President, Commissioner McKinney, that's another thing we're gonna have to look at. They are a 10.5-foot lanes, so the travel lanes are already, relatively tight for a roadway like this.
Right.
But once again, for the same purpose, removing them to restripe and then put them back on top of a new stripe.
Right.
Probably not what we would be proposing at that time. We'll have to look at other options for painting in that area, or whether, if we go with option one, it does give us some more space between them to get in there and maneuver around the delineators. But as we've said, those are the options before you today.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lucas.
Let me just add by way of comment that it seems to me, I can certainly understand the drivers who are concerned with the height and the spacing, because with them as close together as they are, it does, especially, pulling out from a side street, you're looking at an oblique angle, and so all of those delineators close together effectively create a wall that you can't see through. And so I can certainly, I would absolutely prefer to reduce the spacing and reduce the height, and I would be more inclined to, and what was that option? The option 2 was to leave the delineators in place for only
The low stress bikeway.
the low stress bikeway portion. I think that, in my mind, that would make more sense than to have them all the way along, because frankly, the difference that I see, we don't have a large bicycle volume, even with these new delineators in place. The difference in safety between having the delineators along the whole length and simply having the striped bike lane, yeah, I acknowledge there is a difference there, but I'm not sure that it's enough to warrant the additional costs that we're looking at. In any case, I would be more inclined to go with option 2 than option 1. Madam President.
All right, thank you. Thank you
Madam
very much.
President?
Just one moment, Commissioner Hanson.
Yeah, thanks, Meg, very much. This is very helpful. It's my view that this was taken as, okay, let's try something, because our policy towards building multi-use paths on arterials, and this was already in the works. And to me, we aren't building those multi-use paths to delineate them. We're building them to protect them so that they'll be used. So really, the focus needs to be on protecting the users, the vulnerable users in this space. And to me, the candles never did really offer protection. This notion of breakaway, or it can be hit and it's not damaged, the car's not damaged, you can run over them, is a little like those posts they put up, if high speed a car hits it, the car won't be damaged, people in the car won't be injured. But of course, if the post is at a crosswalk, the people standing there don't break away, they get killed. The kids are damaged when they're hit in the bike lane. So the focus, I think, needs to be on what do we do to figure out the best protection for the users of this space. And what I'd suggest is to go with option 1, but for that segment that we're going to be connecting, the low stress bikeway, and also I would suggest in front of Maple Grove Elementary School, is that we put something much more solid. And I have seen posts that are round. They're still plastic, but they're round. They look like bollards. It might require another couple of inches of the bike lane in order to do that. And that they sit on sort of these mini extruded curbs, so that the driver realizes, this is basically like a curb. You know, this is not part of a driving space. This is the curb. And then you can make them lower. You can make them quite a bit lower, but if they look much more solid and a driver thinks, I can't really hit one of these, even if they irritate me, without damaging my car, so I'm not going to. It provides that sense of space. So I would suggest moving forward with one, the first option, but also put in much more solid protection. What I'd like to see is use this area and others as we build in protection, because if the facility doesn't feel they're protected, it won't get used, and we shouldn't be building public facilities that don't get used. And I agree with you, it ought to be used much more than the numbers seem to indicate, and that's because people just don't feel safe in them. I'm sure there's lots of people who send their kids to school and say, you stay on the sidewalk. If you're going to cycle to school, you stay on the sidewalk. Those little plastic candles are not going to protect you. So that's what I would like to see. And then I agree, you don't chip seal the bike lanes. The chip sealing is for car lanes. And going forward, we have a different treatment, maintenance and permanent and short-term, on managing the bike lane. But in this case, we're trying to create a protected facility, multi-use facility, separate from cars. And even these little candles, it's kind of nice to see drivers were given additional lanes. They used to have one lane in each direction. Now they have 2 lanes in each direction plus the turning lane. But those delineators have caused them not to drive quite as fast. And that's a good thing, because the speed limit is 35 and it goes by neighborhoods and schools and parks. So that's my suggestion, is go with one, but come back to us with something much more protected, especially for those areas by the school and the low stress bikeway.
Madam President?
Commissioner Pickering?
Meg, I just want to say thank you. I've seen how you've also interacted with the BAC and these conversations and this quote unquote pilot. And I just want to commend you and the rest of the staff, the district and the commission, because I think, it's hard trying things for the first time. This is our first attempt at doing something like this on an arterial. There's just a lot of things like you've mentioned. There's the cleanup pieces, there's the visibility, there's just the construction issues and timing of all of it. I just want to commend the district for sticking their neck out and doing something different, because there's going to be lots of questions. There's going to be people that are upset because it has changed, right? And I'm grateful that we've stuck it out so that we could see through a few seasons what it looks like and what are the demands and potentially what we can learn from it so we can apply that moving forward. So again, I just want to say thank you, and I want to say thank you to the PAG for their letter, because I looked that over as well. And I just want to agree with Commissioner Goldthorpe and Commissioner Hansen that, ultimately speed kills. We have, some really important sites and locations and sites and attractions on Maple Grove. And ultimately, like I said too, we want this to be a learning opportunity to apply hopefully to other places across the county where it makes sense. And so I think we have learned a lot. And I think, as you've described with the different options, I'm in favor of option 1 as well. And subsequently also agree that we need to look into ways that we can bolster up that support and safety where it really makes sense, where those little ones are going to be mostly concentrated. And then I think too, as you mentioned, Meg, that there's trade-offs. So, I know that the candles aren't necessarily the most attractive option, but they're more cost-effective. We can, replace them versus putting in concrete barriers or something else. So I think that the public also kind of needs to know that although it's not the most pretty option, it's also can be the most flexible and less expensive option. So there's these different places where I think different treatments might warrant things, and we're figuring that out right now. And so that flexibility and open-mindedness, I think, is really important for us as a commission to have and know the facts, which you've obviously given us, Meg, which is fantastic. So again, I think option 1 is our best option in my opinion. And I think too, to your point, Meg, having that open-mindedness to say we don't have all the answers to these other aspects of maintaining the roadway yet, but we're committed to figuring those out, working together to do that. And I think that that's essential if we are going to actually honor the vision and purpose of our agency in maintaining the right of way as best as possible for all users. So thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Goldthorpe.
Just one thing that I forgot to mention, and that has to do with this being a pilot program. When we had our first meetings on this, back when it was a 2-lane go path, there were really no kids walking or riding on this whatsoever. And so the main concern we had was for what was going to happen or the results when the schools were on. And I think those results for the few months that this has been going on have been substantial and will just continue to increase. So from that standpoint, we've done pretty well.
All right, thank you.
Madam President,
Commissioner McKinney.
Can I just add one more comment? I think it's also worth keeping in mind that along any roadway that has this kind of a delineated or separated bike lane, any sweeping that is done of the bike lane area of the roadway edge would have to be done by our mini sweeper. But we've only got one of those. And so the amount of road lane miles that it can handle in any given year, of course, is limited. Without the delineators, our big sweepers, of which we have, I understand, 24, they could handle the sweeping responsibilities along a segment like this. And that's an additional reason to say, well, in any case, that's an additional consideration, a maintenance cost, a challenge in maintenance of a fully delineated bike lane versus one that is striped but can be maintained in the same way that we maintain our vehicle travel lanes. So I think that's at least a consideration to keep in mind.
Thank you very much. All right, Mr. Lucas, do you have a comment?
Sorry, Meg. Commissioners, just for complete transparency, option 1, which has been discussed today, does have an expenditure associated with it. We did list this item on your agenda as a work session with possible action. So for the benefit of the record and for staff direction, we would appreciate a motion on how you would like to proceed.
All right, thank you very much. All right, any further discussion, questions, comments?
No.
All right, Commissioner, you have
Madam Chair, I would move that we approve option 1.
I'll second that.
All right, we have a motion to approve the recommended staff option number 1.
Madam President?
Any discussion, Commissioner?
Yeah, just by way of discussion, I think it would be more prudent to go with option 2, and that's the only reason that I would vote against option 1.
All right, thank you very much.
And Meg,
Commissioner Hanson?
Take my comments, Madam President, about particularly, I do like the notion of focusing in on those particularly vulnerable areas. And since this is only 1 mile, and we learned today that our new mini sweeper can do 13 miles in a day, it probably wouldn't be much difficulty for the mini sweeper to be tested on this week.
All right, no further comments or questions. I will go ahead and call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed?
No.
All right, motion carries. Thank you very much. And that's it. Thank you all very much.